Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today I wanted to talk to y'all about my post-it note editing method. Now, this particular editing method is exactly what it sounds like. It's using post-it notes in order to edit your manuscript. Now, how exactly does that work? So this is a technique that I've used in the past. Most specifically, my most successful usage of this editing tool was with my novel, Love of the Sea. And so this is a really great tool to use when you're at the stage of writing your manuscript or editing your manuscript, where you don't really know where some scenes should go, where you feel the flow of the story is off, or you have some plot holes, or you need to do some work having to do with the actual plot of the story. So how this works is I print out the manuscript in its entirety and I go through it, and with a stack of post-it notes, I then write down each individual scene, major plot point, major character development point, all those sorts of pieces of the story. So I write those down on the post-it notes and then I put them up on my wall. And what makes this so incredibly helpful is that you can see all of the individual pieces of your story, all of the individual points in the timeline of your story, and it makes it a lot easier to be able to pick them up and move them around so that you can then put them in an order that seems to make more sense. It also really helps in identifying plot holes in that you can see kind of the big picture of the overall plot line of your story and then decide for yourself, hey, this post-it note and this post-it note don't really seem to make sense being next to each other. There seems to be something missing here. So being able to see that in such a broad stroke, kind of the whole idea of not being able to see the forest through the trees, this helps you to take that step back and recognize those plot holes or recognize where your story is lacking and you need to insert more plot points into. Conversely, it can also help you with identifying when you have repeat plot points. So if you have two scenes that are just way too similar, or you seem to have repeated something in your story that just really isn't necessary, it makes it a lot easier to identify that so then you can remove it or possibly rewrite it. This is something that I used with Love of the Sea in that there were some broad concepts that needed help in the editing department, in that there were some scenes that were just a little bit too similar to each other, and I was missing a few plot points that had to do with character development points. And so seeing this whole broad view of the editing process really helped me to be able to recognize that and to be able to sit down and write those portions of the story that were really needed. As you can see in my example with putting all these post-it notes on the wall, obviously you don't necessarily have to put them all up on a wall. You could put them on the floor and rearrange them. Maybe if you have like a desk area and you have like a cork board that you want to use, you can also use this technique with a whiteboard sort of thing, with just writing these down instead of having actual physical post-it notes. Or if you're a digital-minded person and you prefer something like that, there is a tool called Slido, which can really help you with something like that. Or you could even use something like PowerPoint, have each individual slide of the PowerPoint be a different plot point, and then you can kind of pick them up and drag and drop them wherever you need to, or you can be able to identify similar plot points that way and be able to identify them in your story and then get rid of them. Whatever method works best for you. It's just sort of the idea is the base point of using post-it notes because that's what personally works best for me, but obviously modify this in order to best fit your circumstances and your writing and editing style. The reason why this part of the process is so important is that before you want to get into the really fine-tune part of the editing process, you need to take a look at the big picture. It's kind of hard for your reader to really appreciate your story if all you're worrying about is the nitty-gritty of typos and grammar and just the fussy details like that. If there are major plot holes in your story or they feel like it's deja vu with certain scenes are nearly identical. So making sure that you go through this first before you begin your major editing part of your process will make your manuscript flow better overall and honestly make the fine-tuned editing process a lot easier to handle. In my personal process, this is what I refer to as my big edits part of the editing process. This is the part of the editing process that I take care of before I worry about grammar and typos and all those little nitty-gritty picky things. So I highly recommend using this technique. It'll really help you to examine the flow of your story. And of course, it's also important to compare the flow of your story against the classic story diagram of rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion, that whole graph, which I'll put right here for y'all. But doing the post-it method really helps with also recognizing that you're following this method of your story as well, making sure that the plot makes sense and that it has the proper pacing so that your reader can have that build up to the big turning point in your story and then getting that ending that they're really looking for. So I hope that you all found this video helpful. If you did, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.